It's such an important concept here to talk about. And part of the reason I'm so passionate, and as you said, you follow my work, is that I don't see SM or being mute as the primary issue to treat. I see that as a symptom. So if you're trying to treat to speak and you're reaching roadblocks, which happens with the majority of individuals, it's because something else is going on that's affecting an individual's ability to socially communicate, engage, and their anxiety and so forth. And the key is to figure that out. So today we're going to talk about sensory processing, which is a tremendous why to the development of SM and why it continues if not addressed properly. When you hear about selective mutism and sensory, talk to me about it. Tell me what your thoughts are in terms of that connection for you.
So typically, when we end up with children with SM, usually they've gone through a number of years where they've been through the school gamut and it's been a painful experience. People have often been trying to really push them to speak in a way that's super uncomfortable for them, and it also puts them in a position where it just increases their anxiety and their stress and decreases their peer connections and their connections with caregivers. And they don't feel safe, they don't feel regulated with it, and we don't see that they're having the outcomes that they want to have. So when we're working with them, it's really about making them feel safe and making them feel regulated, and then those other pieces fall into place. We're certainly referring them to experts such as yourself and to the center, as well as to speech pathologists and other things that might help benefit them, and different forms of therapy that can be helpful. But it's really about them feeling safe enough to be able to work through some of those challenges and really develop some of those regulation skills, which sometimes they're so afraid to even try. They can't even take those risks to move themselves forward because they just don't even feel safe enough. And what it looks like for us in schools is either we have students who are sitting in the halls, hiding in school buildings, who are not communicative, who oftentimes are getting to the point where they're actively combative towards people because they're feeling cornered and they're feeling very threatened by other people's presence.
Yeah, and so what I hear from you is that avoidance occurs too because they
100%.
don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And that's the key. One of the things I talk a lot about, and I do this at every single communicamp and every time I'm working with a family, is what is anxiety? People say treat anxiety. Well, what is anxiety for you? It's different than what anxiety is for someone else. And when you have a very large sensory component to your presentation, the anxiety you feel is different than somebody else's anxiety that may have it from speech and language or learning difficulties or being timid, etc. It goes on and on. So it's about finding out, why is that child anxious? That kind of leads me a little bit into the fight, flight, and freeze. And so I thought it would be great for you to, as an expert in sensory, to kind of talk about that and how that relates to communication and social engagement.
Yeah, and we really look at it as many of the children that we're serving, they're in crisis, and the educators are in crisis too because they don't know how to make a connection with this child. They don't know how to make this move forward. And what this looks like is they get stuck in this analyzing and in this perseveration of these things that are going on, or potentially of these things that could happen. And they're constantly going over this and over this, and they're trying to sometimes solve this problem, but they're assessing it from the perspective of already being in that problem. So they can't often see any solutions or see any way to get outside of that because of these things that are just so concerning to them and upsetting to them. And we start with really basic things like what I call the stance of safety, just how we're interacting with them, how we're standing, how we hold our head, how we hold our hands, and all of those things make the student as well as the staff feel very safe. So then they feel like they can start to communicate with us and build a relationship with us. And then we're doing activities that increase that level of safety. So whether it's caving activities or we're shrinking the space or we're reducing sensory stimuli. People don't give enough credit to that, of just when something's starting to escalate, turn off the lights, stop the music, get everybody else to stop moving around so much. And that reduction of sensory stimuli will help to really kind of rein things in. And parents say this to me a lot, like, I can't get my kid to go to sleep. They're so overwhelmed at night and everything. There's so much going on, and they just stay up for hours thinking about things and everything else. And it's like, well, 2 hours before they go to bed, start shutting down all the lights, start shutting off the TVs, start shutting down the movement. This should be the time where everything is kind of winding down, preparing for sleep, and you're helping to guide them through, here's some things we're going to think about, here's some things we're going to focus on, some things that are easy but yet enjoyable and relaxing to move them to that point so they feel safe and they're able to go to sleep.
And for kids with SM, I always say the loud, the large, the lots of people, the 3L environments. And I
I
say this
love that.
yeah, because it really is like a way for parents and teachers and professionals that work with these kids to understand that the majority of our children that are sensory sensitive kids, whether they're highly sensitive and they don't meet the quote unquote criteria, they tend to do better in quieter, smaller, less crowded environments. So when you were saying a smaller space, caving, it's louder, it's dark, the lights, like all of that are ways to help the child feel safe. Because if they don't feel safe, they don't feel regulated, they're not going to move forward.